In this tutorial, we're going to teach you how to create a lower thirds title in Motion. This is going to be a simple type on top of a moving background, and we're going to make it happen from beginning to end. All you have to do is stay here and make it happen with me. First, go to New from Project Browser. This is going to create a new browser window, and we're going to say Final Cut Pro Title. We also want to make sure that our settings are correct. So we are broadcasting at 1080, which is our high definition broadcast, and our frame rate is 29.97, and the duration of this title is going to be 10 seconds. Once you have all those complete, we want to press open and create our new project. When you first open, you will see a generic default sort of setup here where we have a title background, we have some text on there, and nothing really else. Here in our layers panel, we can see here's our project in a group that contains that type in the background, and that is also reflected here on the very bottom of the screen in our timeline. Remember, what you see in the layers panel is the same as what we see in the timeline down here. These objects to the left, these little blue boxes, are those actual objects on the timeline and when they will be in view and when they will not be in view. So if I were to move the side of this along a little bit, that text will not actually show up until that point in the marker on my playhead, and then it appears. Same with the other side, you can have this thing not appear at certain points by just dragging this over, and as the playhead breaches that point, that object will disappear. So, first things first, we have some text on there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that just because I want to show you how to make your own text. I'm also going to delete this title background since I'm not going to be utilizing it anyway. So starting from a blank canvas here, here along the bottom of our scene, you can see that there are a few different icons, including a pointer, an orbit, a pan tool, a rectangle tool, a Bezier curve, etc. And what we want to focus on is this T, which stands for text. So I'm going to click on that T. It does turn purple when it is ready to use. Click down here and then type a name here. That allows us to create sort of a visual placeholder for where our type will go. You can put your own name or anything else in there as well, but if we're going to utilize this inside of Final Cut Pro, we're going to change that on the fly inside of that program. So this is just a generic marker. Now, we want to modify this and make it our own. So up in the upper left-hand corner, you see it says Library, and we have these toggles for turning the library on or off. But we actually want to get into our inspector. So the inspector, either this button or this tab, will allow us to modify whatever it is or inspect whatever we have selected. In this case, the type that we have selected. Here you can see that there's a lot of complexity to this. There are 4 tabs here. One of them is the properties of the text, which is its position on the screen. Another one is the rotation, which is, which angle it's at. And you can click and drag these things around. And as well as its scale and its shear, etc. There's also a way to add behaviors, which we'll also do. But right now it has no behaviors and it has no filters. But it does have a text tab. And in here we can change the format, the appearance, and the layout of the text. With our format, you can see that this is just your typical, normal kind of change the font, change the size, the line spacing. Again, we see more scale and rotation here as well. And we're going to go ahead and change that. Here is our font. You can make it whatever you would like. There is a collection of fonts as well if you want to do something fun like Zafino or marker felt is fine. And then change the size of For my case, I'm going to go ahead and use the comic script font, and I'm going to set a size to 100. I'm also going to make my alignment here to the left. This is the justification of the text, and the reason I'm using left is because I plan on this being a graphic that comes in from the left side. And so as we type in a name, I want the names to start on the left side. And if I have someone who has a really long name, I don't want it to flow to the right. If we were doing this on the opposite side, I would actually justify this to the right so that a name would start at the end and flow to the left. Okay, cool. There is our text type. Nice and easy. We can also change its appearance by going to the appearance area here. And you can see that we can make this a 3D text. We can change the color of the face here. Here's how we change the color. When you do that, it will pop up a window and allow you to change the color of that thing. Let's go ahead and do that so you can just see how that works. There's the color change. Nice. You also have the option of, instead of just a solid color, you can come here and make this a gradient. And if you do the gradient, you can drop this down and change individual colors. Or you can go ahead and, there we go, there's the individual colors. Make this nice and bluish green, whatever you'd like to do. That looks kind of cool. Or you can actually come over here and just pick an existing one. That one, beachfront's actually pretty nice. So I'm gonna stick with that. You can also see that not just face, but there's also outline, which if you want to create an outline around your text and make it readable regardless of what the background is, this is especially useful. I'm gonna go ahead and make mine black. And then create it to make it a little bit thicker. We can't see that right now, but when I get that rectangle in there, we'll make some adjustments to that as well. There is a lot of options for you. I recommend playing with these, messing with them. You can always go back and change or get rid of them by unclicking that particular style setting. If you want to drop shadow, we can do that too. You can turn them on or off. Okay, next thing, we want to create a rectangle to have as the background. Again, this is going to go over some unknown video, and we are not sure if the background is going to be light colored or dark colored. So one way to handle that is to just go ahead and give a background to our object. Here is a rectangle tool. It does have a drop-down menu. You can do circle or line, but we're going to use a rectangle. And when I click that tool, I can click, hold down, and drag from one corner to the other. I want to go about halfway through my screen here, again for other names that may be long. And then that, when you release, creates a rectangle. Now this rectangle is on top of the type object, and we're going to switch that over. You can click that in the media, and then click, drag, and hold up, and you can see that it creates a little line if I drag it above the rectangle. If I drop it, that will change the position and allow the text to be on top. Pretty awesome. Again, with the rectangle, we want to inspect it, and we can see that it says shape here instead of type. Everything else is the same, but we have shape because it is not type. And now we can also edit its settings. There are some style settings, stroke settings, some advanced, some geometry. We're going to basically go over some basics of this. In the style, let's go ahead and we're going to do gradient again. But this time I'm going to choose to do a different something. Burnt ember? I don't know. Maybe something like that. Chrome? Something that you may like, something you may not like. It's up to you. Or you can customize this. Industrial sky? Sure, something like that. Okay. Again, it also has outline. If you so choose, you can make that wider or not. There's a wide outline. But you can also see that this object has a bunch of handles on it. In case you made your rectangle the wrong size or you want to adjust the size, you can click and drag those handles and it will adjust the size of that rectangle for you, which is very handy, especially if you didn't draw it right the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments there, and that looks kind of nice to me. And you can also see that my type has that black outline that I had created earlier. If you want to go back and adjust that, remember you can click on that in the timeline area or in the layers media. And here is that outline from the inspector to the text, and we are on appearance here. Here it is, my outline. I can make that thinner or wider, however it looks good. Nice. Once you have this set to something that you really think looks good, this is the time where we are going to animate it. So to do that, we're going to do some keyframing. Keyframing is essentially an animation technique that instead of creating a frame-by-frame animation, we are telling the program that our object should be at a certain point in time with a set of properties. And then a later keyframe at a different time, it will have a different set of properties. In our case, I'm going to select this rectangle just to demonstrate how this works. So here's our rectangle. I'm going to put my playhead at 2 seconds. At 2 seconds, I would like my rectangle to be exactly where it is right now. I don't want it to move. I want it to be right there, set in stone. So I'm going to also create or go to my properties panel. And this is where I can see the position. Here is the position of that rectangle. If I go to the right over here, there is a little diamond shape. And that diamond shape is keyframing. When I click on it, it creates a keyframe. Down in my timeline, if I have this little diamond area right here selected and it is purple, you will be able to see your keyframes, and they show up as little red diamonds in your timeline. So at this moment in time, the property, the X and Y position of this rectangle should be this right here. And it is red because it has been keyframed. And I want it to stay in that same spot all the way until my 9th second. So I'm going to go to 9 seconds in, and I'm going to click that again. And you can see that it's created a line in between these two. Now I haven't changed the property, so it's staying right there. And that's what I'm actually hoping for. Now if I go to the very beginning of my timeline, set my timeline to 0, and I click that keyframe again, but this time I'm going to change a value. So I'm going to actually change my X position. You can do this either by dragging your X left and right, or you can go straight to your canvas and just drag this object. And I want to drag it all the way off board. Now what I've done is I've created a keyframe that says at the very beginning of this movie, have this object off the side of the screen. And then as we transition to 2 seconds, I want it to be where it was before. So now you can see as I drag this over, that object is animating itself to that spot. That's pretty cool. If you press play, you can see it happen in real time. There it is. Nice. We also want it to animate off. So as I come over here at 9 seconds, everything stays in place. And then now when I move to my very end, I'm going to add another keyframe. Again, this time I'm going to do the Y position, and I'm going to drag it downwards. So that creates this effect. It's going to move on in the X axis. It's going to stay there because I've told it to stay there for those 7 seconds. And then the very last second, it's going to move off. Nice work. This is repeating because I do have the repeat icon set. And that is how we do keyframe animations. That is the very basics of it. The next thing I want to teach you is that we could also do an animation here, but we're going to use a behavior for the text. So here is my text. My text also could be animated the exact same way, which is a cool effect, but there's also some built-in stuff that also could be utilized to make this look cool. Up in the library section, there's what we call behaviors. When you click on behaviors, those different types of behaviors, and the ones that come with this are text animation and text sequence. If you're to click on text animation, you can see a few different possibilities. One of them is to scroll the text, and you'll see an example of it in the upper left-hand corner. If I do that again, you can see that text happening. Some of them are cool, some of them are, just your typical sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and just pick on one. Track in, that looks good. Now there's two ways I could apply this. I could either drag this directly onto the text, and you can see a plus appears at my cursor, or I can click the apply button up here. And a third way would be to go to your behaviors tab up here at the very, very top and click down and try to select it through this. Here I can do that as well, track in. What this does is it creates a new object on our timeline that is attached to the type. it is attached directly below it. And that track in is going to show how long it actually occurs. And I can make this last longer by dragging left and right, making it really slow if I wanted to. Or I can make it very fast by dragging it in here. And there we go, there's a fast version of it. I may want this to not occur until my background is in, or at some point. And so I can change when I want this type to appear and when I want the tracking to appear. So I'm going to drag that here, change when I want my type to appear. And sure enough, as we play, the rectangle comes in and then the type comes in after it. You want to make sure the type comes in after the behavior comes in, so it doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Cool. Same thing can happen with track out. It doesn't have to be the same out. It can be a different out. So I'm going to take scale out and push that to the very end. As my thing comes over, there we scale out, and that's how that works. So behaviors show up as different objects on our path, our timeline, and they are very useful for making things happen automatically. Last but not least is filters. Filters are a way of making something object, like say our rectangle here, slightly different as well. And we can go to the filters in the library, and you can see there are some filters available. Some of them are basic, simple stuff, color, distortion, glow, looks, stylized. If I click on these, you can see the different things that it does. Some of them are kind of cool. Some of them, may work for your situation or may not. And that depends on what you're really applying it to. So on mine, I'm going to go ahead and let's start halftone. Halftone is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that halftone. You can click apply, and you can see that halftone has been applied to this object. Now these do also show up inside of your timeline, and I can have it turn on and off at different points, and it can actually animate it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this to the beginning. And in my rectangle, if I click on my rectangle in the inspector, now there is the filter of halftone. And here is the parameters for that. So if I wanted to, I can go ahead and mess with these parameters a little bit. Let's say the scale is very large. You can see the effect happening, which is really nice. And I guess at the very, very beginning of this, I'm going to have that scale be, pretty small or pretty large. But by the time I get to the 2-second, I'm going to go ahead and click again. We are keyframing, so I'm going to click that keyframe. And I'm going to make this thing very different. So there you can see it actually will animate that in. And there it goes. Now this isn't very readable, so it actually, implore you to actually reverse what I did. And so you can see here in my keyframe, there's these other buttons. So there's this little left arrow, and if I click on that, it'll move my playhead to that last keyframe. So it automatically moved it to the last keyframe. If I were to click to again, you will see that that one disappeared, and there's a right keyframe. So at this stage, I actually wanted my scale to be the opposite. I'm going to make this really big. And now I'm going to move to the next keyframe, and I want this to be very small. Not too small, just small enough. There we go. And now as I animate this thing, it's going to have that kind of effect. Awesome. Again, be creative. Do something unique. Make it something of your own. This is just a demonstration. And I want you to really focus on having something awesome. In order to share this, there's two things that we can do. One, if we go to File and we say Save As, we're going to need to give this thing a really good description. Lower thirds, half tone rectangle. You want to be very, very explicit with that because we're going to be mixing it in with all of our Final Cut Pro stuff. And it does need a category. We're doing this for WPTV, so we made a category called WPTV, and then we're going to say Publish. Now, inside of Final Cut Pro, we are now going to get that same exact title and we can utilize it in our movies. There it is. It'll be listed under your text and your titles underneath the theme that you gave that. The other way to share this is if you were to go ahead and type your name in there, your actual name, and then we're going to hit share and export the movie. Now, since this is a title, I want to make sure that the background is transparent. To do that, we're going to go to Project, right here in the Layers panel, and there is a background color and a background transparency. I want to make sure this is selected as transparent, or if I wanted this to be a green screen, I can select solid and then turn this to a green, and we can export it as a green screen. To export this as a transparent object, I'm going to go ahead and set this back to black. We're going to hit share and then export movie. And in the settings, we want to ensure that we are going to format color channels to be color and alpha. Alpha is the transparent version of this. It does create a much larger file, but that's how it works. You can always send it to compressor to make it smaller later, but this is what we'll utilize in our broadcasting software or in our segments in Final Cut Pro. And that's all you need to do. You'll send next, but then you'll also save this somewhere that you can load up and move on. That's it, guys. Thank you.